Greetings and welcome to the OFCCP Institute web chat. I am David Cohen and I am joined by co-chair David Fortney. We don't
Hi,
have
everyone.
Mickey Silberman. Yeah, we don't have Mickey with us today, but we just wanted to give an update on some things that are happening in terms of enforcement, some cases that we've seen, the EEO1 report, and potentially seeing a new ethnicity code. Before we talk about that, we are going to be in Chicago, November 9th and 10th, and that is our fall conference. We've got a lot to talk about. It'll be right after the election. So one thing we're going to be kicking off talking about is what are the implications of either a President Clinton or a President Trump? And
we're already starting to see some of the peel off with the EEOC General Counsel formally announcing today, bye-bye, he's out. So what that means, and we'll talk about who's changing chairs, where they're going, or more importantly, who's coming in and what to expect.
Yeah. So the three co-chairs will be joined by Gary Siniscalco, Paul White, Shafika, John Geyer from Paul Hastings. We'll also have someone from the Solicitor's Office, Consuela Pinto, as well as
from the National Solicitor's Office. Very senior.
National Solicitor's Office. Talk to us about enforcement and cases that they're working on, and we'll be joined by EEOC Commissioner Hy Feldblum. So very much looking forward.
Who's always entertaining. Those that have seen and know her.
Yeah, always entertaining. And there's certainly a lot going on with EEOC as well. So if you're interested in attending that conference in Chicago, go to our website, the OFCCPinstitute.org. We'll be talking about the election. We'll be talking about compensation, talking about state equal pay laws, a whole bunch of stuff. So hope to see you all there. But before Chicago, David and I thought that we'd talk about some of the things that we're seeing. OFCCP just ended the fiscal year 2016 on September 30, and a lot happened on September 30. I think
busier than usual.
Yeah, I think a third of all settlements were signed literally on the last day of the fiscal year. OFCCP cleaned house in terms of backlog of cases, and we thought we'd talk about a couple of those. We'll talk more in Chicago, but the first one, David, talk to us just quickly about the asbestos contractor.
Right. So the asbestos contractor, Asbestos Specialty Inc. or ASI. What's interesting there is that it was a harassment claim, and the charges were filed with the EEOC as well as, and then they were cross-notified, so OFCCP also was investigating. The resolution included a dual resolution, that is with EEOC plus OFCCP. That's the second time we've seen that in about the last year. And in this case, there's $100,000 payment, not for back pay, not for the type of damages that OFCCP collects. It was all run through EEOC as damages for harassment. And EEOC is going to administer the back pay claim, but the contractor ends up with this dual reporting obligation, has to independently and separately report to OFCCP and EEOC. So I think and this again is out of the Atlantic region. Mid-Atlantic there in Philadelphia, Michelle Hodge, and is another reminder that this, MOU, exchange of information, close coordination, it isn't just in the context of working on the EEO1, it's in the context of resolving cases. And I will tell you, we regularly now, when we deal with an OFCCP matter, we absolutely ask our clients what EEOC matters are open. And we ask the agency, are you doing anything relating to EEOC on this file? I think it's a big deal, and I think we're going to see a lot more of that.
I think we're going to see a lot more of that as well. And let's talk about compensation. And we're going to talk just briefly about two cases. One's an administrative complaint. The other is a conciliation agreement. And the complaint, David, you and I talked about this one, company's Analogic. And what's fascinating to me about the complaint is that the whole case is about Analogic acquired another company called Copley, and Analogic went through a review of their jobs. They called it a leveling process, reviewed their jobs, reviewed their grades, what have you. And then later on, they brought the Copley employees onto their new system. But when they brought them onto the new system, apparently Analogic paid more than Copley, and the Copley employees came in below the minimum of the range and apparently didn't bring them up. And what OFCCP is alleging is that there were females that were below the range of the new Analogic system. And so the issue is a legacy company got brought over to a new system. When, we always ask the question, David, when are you required to bring them up? We're going to see some litigation.
And can you red circle them? Can you keep them at their original pay? And how soon do you have to put them onto the platform? Honestly, the Title VII doesn't provide that answer. And this I will just give OFCCP credit. This is actually a compensation case. This isn't a hiring case trying to masquerade as a compensation case. And kind of reminds me of the day when OFC and the EEOC used to bring sort of more interesting and potentially controversial legal issues like this one. And this is a case very worth watching.
It's certainly worth watching. A couple other things to note. One, apparently it's a disparate impact case.
Right.
Which I'm not sure what the seemingly neutral practice is, but I guess that will come out in litigation.
To be identified in discovery.
Yeah, to be identified in discovery. The other thing, too, that was interesting, David, is in the complaint, they used the term substantially similar instead of similarly situated, which sounds like California Fair Pay Act language. How that plays out will also be interesting.
Well, and that's something we're going to absolutely dive into in Chicago, because we do anticipate, and I think this case is perhaps a harbinger of that the agency is going to start crosswalking its claims to start aligning a very, I'll call it, liberal reading of Title VII to try to align with California. And frankly, I'm not sure how far they can go in that regard. The other thing, David, you point out, being an impact case, numbers alone, no anecdotal evidence, numbers alone are sufficient to bring the case. Yes, let's not forget the technical point. It's not a technical point. You have to identify which practice you're challenging, which they failed to do. But that'll get sorted out.
Yeah. The other case is GenLight, not litigation, but a conciliation agreement. What's interesting about that case, we'll kind of break it down in Chicago. The analytics were performed by job group. So not SSEG, not PAG, or Pay Analysis Group, but affirmative action job group, an aggregation, and the contractor settled on that one. We'll break it down in Chicago and talk about that, and talk about the implications of your job groups if OFCCP is going to be using them for discrimination analyses versus just CP.
What's interesting isn't so much, I mean, OFCCP has been trying to use job groups, but what we found, I think, is pretty consistently there has been successful rejection of that approach by the contractor community because the consequences are typically quite adverse. So we'll dig into this one a little bit more and perhaps use it as a lesson learned on what to avoid because of those types of consequences.
Yeah. The other thing, David, we'll talk about in Chicago is the EEO1 component report has been approved by OMB, and looks like, first reporting will be March 2018, but the election will matter. You agree?
The election will matter. The EEO1 report, it's all over. I mean, all the decisions, as you indicate, are made. So we'll make sure everyone is up to date on what those requirements are. Commissioner Feldblum, I know, will have some views on that and be talking about that in real time with us at Chicago. And the election matters. It's the type of change, regulatory requirement that I'm quite confident a President Trump would roll back. On the other hand, we're growing increasingly confident that that probably will not occur. So I think the more practical point is we're going to focus even though it may be interesting to talk about the other aspects, we're going to focus on what compliance begins to look like under the new EEO1 reporting.
Yep.
Big
and
deal.
Dave, the last thing to talk about briefly came as a surprise to me, came out of nowhere, but the White House is proposing to add a new ethnicity and the collection of a new ethnicity. I would assume this would cascade over into EEOC and OFCCP.
Into EEO1 categories, presumably.
EEO1.
BLS, where we collect data, census data. I mean, there are lots of ripple effects in our society. Right. Well, first, identify the new code for us, Dave. I'm sorry, I cut you off.
It's Middle Eastern North African, MENA. So it's up on the Federal Register right now for comment, and it's quite possible that if that goes through, that in the future we'll be collecting, our self-ID forms will be collecting this information. So that's interesting.
Yeah, well, and we'll talk about, because some people have had a very strong reaction to the thought of now all of a sudden starting to collect and identifying which individuals in our society would fit that category in light of some of the other statements, particularly that have been made in the now pending political contest. And what those, now some people call those conspiracy theorists, some not, but there's a lot of conversation there to be had. And it represents, I mean, look, if you think about it, the only ethnic group we have is Hispanic, which is a one size that fits very few, honestly, that fall under Hispanic. The concept that there should be broader ethnic groups is probably a sound one, and there's a lot that could be added. It's interesting, where does one begin and where does one stop once we go down that slope? So,
Well, lots to talk about Chicago, right?
Absolutely. It's going to be great. And by the way, Chicago is just a fabulous city. And trust me, no snow. It's early enough, folks. Don't worry about that. Come on in.
So once again, come here from all the experts. Come here from Consuela Pinto from the Solicitor's Office, Hy Feldblum from EEOC. We're going to have some great conversations talking about the election, the president, predictions on a new administration. If you're interested in attending, check out the website, the OFCCPinstitute.org. And in addition, if you're interested in becoming a member, check out our website or send us an email. So,
and we've had big uptick on both fronts, so jump into it. We're looking forward to seeing everyone.
Well, Mr. Fortney, thanks so much as always. We'll chat soon.
You.
All right, take care.
Bye-bye.